girls. It's week number 5 of Overwatch League. A couple things to note. Uh, Another video released earlier today. It's a long one, as you can see if you look at it. That is kind of my full kind of analysis of a earlier match between Seoul and Boston. So if you're interested in seeing a fight slow down and me talking about different fights and reasons why those two teams are doing well or poorly, then please check that out and let me know what you think about it. But otherwise, we're going to be talking about the last 8 matches of stage number 1 after Sunday. Obviously, the playoffs will be set. So then, Monday or Tuesday, look for a video previewing the stage 1 playoffs. So, super exciting stuff. And without further ado, matches today. We're starting out with Washington against Paris. So, Washington still winless on the season. Paris has lost 3 straight games. They're essentially out of the playoffs. They would have to win both their matches and get a ton of maps to even have a chance. I think this is going to be their bounce back, though. I think Paris takes this series. They're playing on Busan, Kings Row, Volskaya, and then Dorado, as you can see. So, main reasons for Paris winning this is they're still much, much better at GOATs than Washington. Washington, I believe, is the worst team in the league right now. Paris has had their issues, especially with Zarya. We've seen that for sure with Soon and now Shadowburn. But like I said, they have played some great teams this season, so I'll give them a little bit of a break. They were able to take a map against Vancouver, San Francisco. They did not take a map against Vancouver. So, I mean, I don't like pretty much anything I'm seeing from Washington. I think Guido is the worst Zen in the league. I think Jonas is a subpar main tank. I think Corey is pretty bad on the Zarya. Kha'Zix and Sam I feel like have played pretty decently. Otto or Stratus on Brig has been okay. But I don't see them beating Paris, even though Paris has definitely struggled these last couple of weeks. I think they'll bounce back and get their 3rd win of the season, and I think it will be a 3-1. I think Washington will probably take map 4, but I think Paris wraps this one up, and it's not super interesting or competitive in my eyes. We do have a very interesting one for the second match, though. London Spitfire and Seoul Dynasty. So 2 teams that are 3-3. The winner has a pretty solid chance of making the playoffs. Loser will be obviously eliminated. London has a -1 map differential, so they could win this and still miss. Same thing with Seoul. I think they're at +1 overall. So both these teams, they could really use a win. The Nepal, Hollywood, Temple of Anubis, and then Route 66 of the maps. So these are 2 inconsistent teams. These are 2 teams that have underperformed in my eyes. But as of right now, I'm gonna go with the Spitfire. I think that they're playing a little bit better overall. Even though they had their first 2 terrible weeks, they barely lost to Shanghai in a bit of a sloppy game, but they didn't look super bad. Seoul has looked very bad in a couple of their matches. They got toasted by Boston. So they're sitting at 3-3, and they did beat Washington last time out. They didn't even play their starters. So I assume we'll go back to the lineup of Fleta, Fissure, Michelle, Jexy, Jaehong, and who am I saying? Munchkin. I assume we'll go back to that. They had like Marvel and Toby and others in there. Zumba. So I think London matches up a little bit better against them. Seoul has struggled against London and New York in the past, and I think that's going to translate to a London win. I think it'll be 3-1. I think Seoul could very possibly take map 3. I think Temple might be a good one for them, but both teams have struggled to attack points, especially 2CP points or hybrids. So we'll see how that plays out. I think games 2 and 3 could get very interesting. But I I don't have a ton of confidence in either of these teams right now. They have very high ceilings, but have underperformed. But I have more faith in London, so I'm going to go with them. There's another great matchup after that: Boston Uprising and Dallas Fuel. So Dallas wins, they're in. That's all they got to do. They could lose and still make it, but their chances wouldn't be great. Um, Especially if this is like a 3-1 or worse for Boston, because Boston's sitting at 3-3. They're in a situation where if they win, they're in pretty good shape to make it, but they're not guaranteed. If they lose, they're eliminated 100%. So they got Ilios, Kings Row, Volskaya, and Dorado. So these are two very solid teams. I like how both of them have been playing. But if when push comes to shove, and especially with this map pool, I like Dallas. I think that they'll take. I am very very confident they'll take Kings Row. Map 1 will be extremely important. I think Boston will probably take that in a close one. I think this one probably goes to 5. These are two. I think they're pretty well matched teams. I think Dallas is a little bit better, and that's why they'll take a very close win. I like the big X factor in this one for me is the Zarya battle. I like AKM a lot more on Zarya right now than Color Hex, and I think that will um, create the little bit of difference that gives them an edge. And they will be able to edge out Boston. So I could see this one being definitely a 3-1 for Dallas, but I'm going to go with 3-2 with Dallas taking the win and making playoffs for the second straight stage. And then the last match of today, you got Atlanta Reign versus Chengdu Hunters. So the Hunters have become like they've become the Shanghai of this year almost in terms of everybody's rooting for them. Not in terms of they're that awful. They're not a top tier team, obviously. They're sitting at 2-4, but they had a great match against Vancouver. Ameng showed his giant Reinhardt dick and had 30 Earthshatter stuns on Route 66. On one map, he had 30 Earthshatter stuns in Overwatch League in GOATS meta. That's insanity. That's just absolute insanity. So Chengdu has looked very much improved. Atlanta's coming off a rough loss to the Gladiators, but they're still sitting at 3-2. They're in good shape to make the stage 1 playoffs. Essentially, if they win one game and lose one game, they're pretty set. If they win both their games, they could end up as like the number 3 seed. So, looking at the maps, I like Atlanta in this one. I think that they're a little bit more well suited to play against Chengdu than like Vancouver would be because they have some wacky strategies of their own. Like especially they've seen a lot of like Bastion play on Horizon Lunar Colony. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a battle of weirdness. I think Atlanta will run a pretty good. They will run a lot of goats, especially maps 2 and 4. Chengdu will make it close. I think that if there'd be a map that Chengdu would win, it'd be Nepal. I'd probably give them the best chance on, or maybe Numbani as well. I think Numbani will come down to how good the first point holds will be for each team. But I like Atlanta winning this one 3-1. Like I said, they did take a pretty hard loss to Gladiators, but Gladiators were playing extremely well last week. I don't think that's too much of a. It's not a horrible loss for Atlanta, and by any means. And I think they're going to bounce back. They're going to realize that they're definitely in control of their own destiny for the playoffs, and they'll take advantage of that. Going on to Sunday, we got Philly versus Paris. So this is another interesting one. Philly's 4-2. Paris will either be 2-4 or 3-3 at the time of this match. The maps are Busan, Kings Row, Horizon, and then Rialto. So these are two teams that I think are underperforming. Philly's 4-2, but their schedule's been so weak. I mean, it's been pitiful. I don't like. Is there a single win where it's like, man, Philly really impressed me? They beat the Spitfire in week 1, but the Spitfire looked awful that week. Both of these teams have actually beat the Spitfire. So, and then Philly's got smacked by Dallas. They've beaten some teams like Washington. So Philly has definitely not impressed me, but Paris hasn't impressed me either. I think these two teams are pretty well matched. I like Paris is definitely a better Goats team, Rhine Goats, but we'll see if Philly can really use Winston Goats effectively. They're playing on Kings Row instead of Numbani, which is a little unfortunate for them because Winston's not as good on Kings Row as he is on Numbani. I think this map set is honestly better for Paris, and I'm actually gonna. I'd say this is an upset. I'm actually gonna pick Paris to win this. They've looked bad the last 3 weeks, but I think that Shadowburn has been a bit better than Soon on the Zarya. As long as Paris doesn't let Carpe go too nuts on Zarya, I think they can definitely win this matchup, and I think they will in 4. They're gonna take it 3-1. So that might be the biggest like upset that I've picked all year. I don't know. All right, so then we got two teams towards the bottom here. Washington's going to get another chance to get their first win before the stage is over. They're playing against Florida. Florida sitting at 1-5. They did beat Philadelphia, but they have, of course, lost all of their other matchups. So looking at the maps, it's not a great map pool for Florida. I think Dorado is pretty decent for them, but other than that, like Hollywood and Volskaya isn't really what they want, I don't think. But I give Florida a slight advantage here. I think they'll take map 1. I see this one going to 5. I think Florida's going to win it in 5. They have a little bit more synergy. They're a little bit of a better team right now. I like them more for control. I think Florida takes game 1. Washington comes back and wins the next 2, and then Florida gets game 4 and then 5 as well, to get their second win of the stage. But honestly, I mean, this is definitely Washington's best chance to get on the to get a win and to avoid being the Valiant and being 0-7. But I don't trust them enough. They even when they position themselves well in fights, they just don't follow up on it well enough. And even though Florida has struggled, they have also looked good in spurts, and that's why I'm going to give them a slight edge in this matchup. After that, you got Houston playing against Atlanta. So Houston's 3-3. Atlanta will either be 4-2 or 3-3. So I mean, Houston's in the same situation. They got to win to have a chance. They could win and still not make it, just like all the other 3-3 teams. Just it's going to come down to map differential. And then Atlanta, obviously, their first match will affect like where they're at in this one. If they're 4-2, they're going to be looking real good. But either way, I definitely like Atlanta in this matchup. I think they played a lot better as a whole on the season. They got some nice maps for them, like Ilios and Lunar Colony. So Houston will struggle on those, I think. Houston, I think they'll take Kings Row. I like Houston on that map. They're very experienced on it. They've kind of cleaned up their comps. They've cleaned up their comps, and I like their lineups a bit more now rather than the first couple weeks. But I don't think they're a better team than Atlanta in any way. I think most people would agree with that. So I think they go into halftime 1-1, and then Atlanta comes out and takes games 3 and 4 to win the match 3-1 and send themselves to the playoffs. And then Houston, even if they finish 3 and 4, as long as they don't get 4-0'd, I don't think they can be too mad about that as a stage. And I think Atlanta will be a little bit too, but I think Houston will definitely be happy to see Goats meta go by the wayside. So then the last matchup of the day, it's a rematch from a couple weeks ago, Guangzhou Charge versus Vancouver Titans. So Titans won their last matchup, but it was extremely close, 3-2. It was great back and forth. Guangzhou looked like they were probably going to win the entire match, but then a huge bomb combo won it for Vancouver on actually Ilios, which is the first map. So I think Guangzhou definitely has a chance here, but I don't think they'll quite pull it off. Vancouver didn't look great in their match versus Chengdu. So we'll see if Guangzhou really tries to utilize some of the strategies that Chengdu did and play some wacky comps, because that seemed to really throw Vancouver off their game. Because I don't think Guangzhou can just beat them straight up in a Goats fight. I think Guangzhou takes map 1. They've looked good on control maps. Like I said, Vancouver needed essentially a miracle to beat them on Ilios last time, so I like Charge to take that one. But then I think, similar to their match against the Gladiators, Vancouver will take the last 3 maps, and the Charge, just like I said, like their match against the Gladiators, they'll be able to take the first map. Then after that, I think they'll keep a couple of these close, but they just won't quite be able to get over the hump. Kind of like the Shock versus Excel match, where the Shock kept every map close, but they just couldn't quite beat New York on any of the maps. because they are outclassed by just a little bit. And I think we have a very similar situation here. And unfortunately for Guangzhou, that means they finish the stage 3-4, and they will miss the playoffs. So they really need a win here. But I do think Vancouver will take it and finish off the stage 7-0 as to join New York. So if these hold, then we'll have two 7-0 teams and two 0-7 teams. But who knows? Justice could win both of their matchups. It's possible. And then Guangzhou definitely has a chance against Vancouver. I think a lot of these will be competitive. I think the ones that'll be the least competitive are probably Atlanta versus Chengdu, and then Outlaws Atlanta. But all of these have potential to be some good matches. It's going to be crazy to see who sneaks in and who is knocked out of the playoff picture. So hopefully you guys are able to watch some of these matchups and enjoy them. Good luck to your teams, whether they're playing today or tomorrow. Or good luck to them if they are making the stage playoffs. Thank you guys very much for watching. Have a great couple days, and then I'll see you in the next one for stage playoff predictions.